They said she couldn't. She wasn't strong enough, smart enough, fast enough, tough enough. They said the world wasn't made for her kind of dream, that the lane she wanted to walk had no space for her feet. Faith over fear is not just a catchy phrase, it's a way of life for those who dare to dream when everything around them screams doubt. When she stood at the edge of her future, fear was loud. It whispered in her ear, told her she wasn't ready, reminded her of every mistake, every shortcoming, every time she tried and failed. Fear had a way of showing up early, uninvited, trying to convince her that stepping forward would only lead to disappointment. It painted pictures of failure in her mind, so vivid she could almost feel the sting of falling before she even took a step. But in the middle of all that noise, there was something quieter, something steady. It was faith. Faith doesn't always shout. Sometimes it's just a whisper, a steady hand on your back, telling you to keep moving forward even when your legs feel weak. She chose to listen to that voice. Not because she didn't feel fear, she did. It stood right in front of her, trying to block her path. But faith stood taller inside of her. Faith reminded her that fear was a liar. Fear says, "What if you fail?" Faith says, "What if you fly?" Fear points to obstacles. Faith focuses on the possibilities. And she made a decision to believe in what was possible, even when there was no evidence in front of her. She understood something powerful. Faith and fear both ask you to believe in something that hasn't happened yet. Fear asks you to believe in the worst. Faith asks you to trust in the best. And she wasn't about to hand over the keys to her life to fear. No, she took those keys, turned them in the ignition, and let faith drive. It wasn't easy. The road wasn't smooth. She had doubts. She had days when she wanted to give up, days when everything in her life seemed to fall apart. But faith isn't about not having struggles. It's about knowing you'll get through them. She didn't need to see the whole staircase to take the first step. She didn't need to have every answer before she started moving. Faith carried her when she was too tired to carry herself. Faith told her to show up even when it seemed like nothing was happening. When others quit, she stayed. When others doubted, she believed. Not because she was fearless, but because she knew faith was bigger than her fear. Fear feeds on the unknown. It makes you question your ability, your worth, your purpose. But faith, real faith, takes the unknown and turns it into opportunity. She stopped waiting for everything to be perfect. She stopped waiting for all the lights to turn green before she started driving toward her dreams. She moved, even when the path was dark, because faith told her that sometimes the path lights up after you take the step. There were people who looked at her and thought she was crazy. They couldn't understand why she was chasing something that wasn't guaranteed. Why she was working late nights, early mornings, putting in effort when there were no immediate results. They didn't get it because they were looking with their eyes. She was looking with her heart. Faith sees what eyes cannot. Faith believes before there's proof. Faith acts before the reward. And here's the thing. Fear never really left. It still came knocking. It still showed up when she tried something new, when she reached for something higher. But now she recognized its voice. She didn't let it paralyze her anymore. She acknowledged it, but she didn't obey it. She let faith do the leading. Faith didn't promise it would be easy. It promised it would be worth it. And it was. Every time she chose faith over fear, she grew. She got stronger, more confident, more certain of who she was and what she was capable of. Fear wanted to keep her small. Faith showed her how to rise. Fear told her to settle. Faith told her to soar. She kept choosing faith because faith kept choosing her. Even when the world said she couldn't, even when they told her to be realistic, to slow down, to quit, she believed. She believed she was made for more, and that belief changed everything. When she finally stood in the middle of the life she once only dreamed about, she didn't look back at fear and thank it for keeping her safe. She thanked her faith for carrying her forward. She knew then what she had always felt deep inside. Fear makes you hesitate, but faith makes you move. And when you move with faith, nothing is impossible. Pain is something nobody asks for, but everybody gets. It shows up in moments when life knocks you down so hard, it feels like you may never get back up. She knew that feeling. She knew what it meant to be broken, to cry herself to sleep, to stand in the middle of a storm and wonder if the sun would ever shine again. But pain, as brutal as it was, became her greatest teacher. It stripped her down to nothing so she could rebuild into something stronger, something unshakable. She didn't just survive the pain, she used it. She turned her pain into power. At first, pain made her feel small. It made her question her worth. It whispered that maybe she wasn't enough, maybe she didn't deserve more. It had a way of making her feel isolated, like no one could possibly understand what she was going through. But deep down, something in her refused to let pain have the final say. She made a decision. If she had to go through it, it wasn't going to be for nothing. She was going to take every ounce of that hurt and turn it into something that mattered. She was going to use it as fuel. There were days when the weight of it all felt unbearable. Days when she wanted to give in, when the pain felt too heavy to carry. But she discovered something about herself during those times. She was stronger than she thought. Every time she thought she had hit her breaking point, she found a little more strength. It wasn't the kind of strength that comes easy. It was forged in the fire of loss, rejection, disappointment. It was built moment by moment, decision by decision, to keep going, even when everything in her screamed to stop. Pain became her motivation. It pushed her to work harder, to fight for herself when no one else did. It became the reason she got up early, the reason she stayed late, the reason she refused to quit. She wasn't trying to outrun her pain, she was using it to run farther than she ever thought possible. It sharpened her focus, it made her relentless. She realized that pain can either break you down or build you up, and she wasn't about to be broken. She stopped seeing pain as the enemy and started seeing it as part of her journey. Every scar told a story, every wound had a lesson behind it. She learned that it's not the pain itself that defines you, it's what you do with it. And she chose to let it mold her into something more powerful. Every time life knocked her down, she got up with more determination. Every time she was told no, she turned it into a not yet. And eventually, those setbacks became setups for something greater. People often think power comes from a place of comfort, but real power, the kind that changes lives, comes from surviving what was meant to destroy you. She became a living example of that. Her power was rooted in the very pain she once thought would end her. And because she had walked through the fire, she could stand in front of others and show them they could too. Her pain became her platform. Her story became a light for others still stuck in the dark. She didn't hide from her pain. She didn't pretend it wasn't there. She faced it head on. And in doing that, she found healing. Not because the past didn't hurt anymore, but because she stopped letting it control her. She owned it. She owned her story. She owned her truths. And that ownership gave her power. It gave her the strength to walk tall, to speak up, to lead by example. Pain gave her empathy. It gave her compassion. It made her realize that everyone is fighting battles we can't always see. It humbled her. But it also gave her grit. It gave her the kind of inner strength that can't be shaken by circumstances. She became unmovable, unbreakable, because she had already survived what she once thought she couldn't. And that's where her power came from. She used that power to build something better. She used it to chase her dreams with a vengeance. She used it to break generational curses, to rewrite her future, to create a life she could be proud of, and along the way, she showed others that they could do the same. Pain might have been the beginning of her story, but it wasn't the end. It was just the fuel that powered her transformation. She didn't just move past her pain, she rose because of it. She turned it into strength, into wisdom, into a drive so fierce that nothing could stop her. And every time someone looks at her and wonders how she did it, she smiles. Because she knows the answer is simple. She turned her pain into power. Discipline and focus are two of the most powerful tools anyone can possess. They are not flashy or glamorous, they are not always visible in the moment, but over time, they create results that speak for themselves. She understood that success wasn't built on talent alone. It wasn't luck that made the difference. It was discipline, the ability to show up day after day, whether she felt like it or not. It was focus, the power to keep her eyes on the goal, even when distractions pulled at her from every direction. Together, discipline and focus became her superpowers. Every morning, she made a decision to commit. Not once, but over and over again. She committed to the grind when it wasn't exciting. She committed to the process when there were no quick rewards. It wasn't about motivation. Motivation fades. It was about discipline. She woke up early, stayed late, and did what needed to be done, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. Discipline taught her how to push past her comfort zone, how to embrace the hard work that most people avoid. It didn't matter if no one was watching, she was watching. She was holding herself accountable. That mattered more than any outside approval ever could. Focus kept her on track. While others got distracted, she stayed locked in. She didn't waste time worrying about what everyone else was doing. She wasn't caught up in comparing her path to anyone else's. She knew comparison was a thief stealing time and energy. So she focused. She focused on her own lane, her own growth, her own mission. She didn't try to do everything. She focused on doing the right things. The things that moved her closer to her goals. The things that would pay off in the long run, even if no one else saw it yet. There were days when it felt monotonous. Days when the routine wore her down. But she trusted the process. She understood that mastery comes through repetition. She knew that every small action mattered. Every workout, every study session, every early morning, every late night. It was all adding up. Brick by brick, she was building something that couldn't be shaken. Discipline made her consistent. Focus made her precise. Together, they made her unstoppable. She saw people start and quit. She saw them chase after quick fixes and shortcuts, but she wasn't interested in shortcuts. She was interested in strength, real, lasting strength. And that only comes through discipline. There were temptations to give up, to slack off, to cut corners. But every time those temptations came, she reminded herself why she started. She kept her vision clear. That's what focus does. It keeps your purpose in front of you so you don't lose sight of where you're going. Discipline made her show up. Focus made her show up with purpose. She wasn't just working hard, she was working smart. Every decision was intentional. Every step was calculated. She didn't waste energy on things that didn't matter. She didn't let distractions pull her off course. She had goals to reach. She had a life to build. And she wasn't about to let anything get in the way of that. People asked her how she stayed so committed. They wanted to know how she kept going when things got hard. The answer was simple, but not easy. Discipline and focus every single day. She made it a habit. She made it who she was. And after a while, it stopped feeling like work. It became her way of life. She didn't need to force it. It was part of her identity now. She was disciplined, she was focused, and that's why she was winning. There was a time when she doubted herself, when she wondered if the sacrifices were worth it. But the more disciplined she became, the more confident she felt, the more focused she stayed, the clearer her path became. Success wasn't some mystery anymore. It was the result of small decisions made consistently over time. It was waking up and doing the work. It was keeping her mind clear and her priorities straight. She realized discipline wasn't about being perfect. It was about being committed. There were days when she stumbled, days when she felt off track, but discipline brought her back. Focus reminded her what mattered. She didn't let a bad day turn into a bad week. She didn't let failure define her. She kept moving forward, and over time, she gained momentum. Momentum fueled by discipline and focus. She achieved things she once thought were impossible. She reached goals that used to feel out of reach. And it wasn't because she was the most talented. It was because she refused to give up. Because she chose discipline over comfort, focus over distraction. She learned that success isn't about big moments. It's about the small ones, the daily choices, the quiet grind, the decision to stay locked in when everyone else is losing focus. Discipline and focus shaped her future. They turned potential into power. And now, when people look at her life and wonder how she did it, they don't see the early mornings, the late nights, the sacrifices. But she knows. She knows what it took. And she knows she wouldn't change a thing. Because the power of discipline and focus didn't just change her results, it changed her. So she did. And now, They're silent, not because they don't have something to say, but because they're standing in the presence of a woman who turned every no into fuel, every closed door into a wall she knocked down, every doubt into drive. And she's still going, still climbing, still rising. Because when you finally understand who you are, there is no they that can stop you. They said she couldn't, and she smiled because she already did, and she's not done yet.